Hello, hopefully I am live. Oh, it's Friday again. How did that happen? So it's a grey and wet afternoon in Portmore today, but never mind, I'm in my craft room, so that's always a good start. Let me just look over to my iPad and see if I can see myself, and I can, so that's good. Let me turn the volume right down if I can find the button. There we go, otherwise I shall be in stereo. There we are. And Sandy's there, she's saying, yes, I'm live. Fabulous, thank you, Sandy. I don't know if anybody else is there yet. I tried so hard to start on time today. I think I might have been fractionally late, but not too bad. I'm just going to put some hand cream on. I know you'll forgive me. I don't know about you, but I'm getting through gallons of this stuff with all the hand washing. I'm working with paper anyway, dries your hands out. So I meant to do this before we started, but I didn't. There we go. I've got a lovely hand cream that doesn't smell of anything particularly delicious, but it's brilliant because it doesn't leave greasy marks on your card. So I can put it on while I'm crafting and it will be absolutely fine. So let's have a look. Faye is here. Hi Faye, lovely to have you. She says hello. Belinda's here. She says hello to everyone. Mary's here. Sandy's greeting you all. So it's so nice. Everybody's so friendly here. It's really lovely. Marjorie's here. Right, Marjorie, your man must have been and gone. At least hopefully he has. So I'm very glad to have you. Anything else I've missed? Let's have a quick look. No. Oh, Lorraine's here. That's really nice. Hi, Lorraine. So I want to know what you've all been doing this week. Has anybody found anything exciting to do in lockdown? I wish I could say I have, but I haven't. We had my husband's birthday on Tuesday. That was really nice. He's easily pleased, bless him, although perhaps we all are these days. We went to the farm shop and did a food shop, and then we went to the garden centre on the way back, and he spent some garden vouchers that he'd been given. What did he get? He got some edging shears for the lawn and quite a lot of dahlia tubers. I think they're tubers, aren't they, with dahlias, to go in a new flower bed he's making. So he was a happy bunny. And then in the evening we had a Zoom with his parents and our daughter, who doesn't live at home with us, and Russell's brother, and we blew out the candle on his cake. Sadly I couldn't fit 57 candles on there, so he only got one. And he opened his presents sort of on Zoom, which was a first time for us, but it was certainly better than nothing, and it was really nice for him to at least be able to see and chat to his family. Although I say see because unfortunately his parents were having issues with their, I think it was issues with their bandwidth. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, don't I? But anyway, we could hear them perfectly with no picture, or we could see them and hear them talking in slow motion. So we kind of compromised and kept moving between the two. Technology, eh? It's one of those things, isn't it? It's either brilliant or it's horrendous. So let's have a look. Anybody else here? Mary's saying hi to everyone. Faye says she watched some of the videos, so she thought she would join in today live as she's free. I'm really glad you did, Faye. Yeah, we chatted a little bit, didn't we, about the one I did last week. I seem to remember you had a pile of patterned paper that you were looking to use up, which is a very good thing. Because if you use it up, you can replenish it, can't you? Whereas if you've got a pile that's just getting higher and higher all the time, you feel a bit guilty about replenishing it. Okay, so that was my week. I'd love to know what your week's involved. Excuse me. Oh, there we go. As always, if you're enjoying these videos, it's brilliant if you can like them, and also if you can hit that share button, which means that it just puts the link to the video up on your Facebook page, and that means that people that see your Facebook page who might enjoy crafting can also see my videos, even though they might never have heard of me. So that just helps me get seen a little bit more widely, and hopefully some people who will enjoy them will be able to see them as well. So that would be great. Let me tell you what Stampin' Up news there is. We have fractionally over a week left of Sale-a-Bration, which isn't very much. Sale-a-Bration ends a week on Sunday, the 28th of February. So remember, it finishes at the end of this month. We don't have 3 months of it this year. But there is still time for you to pop an order in if there's something in the brochure you've had your eye on and you haven't got it yet. Sale-a-Bration will be back in the summer, so you'll get another go at it then. I haven't seen what the free items are going to be, but I'm sure they'll be lovely. So Sale-a-Bration is finishing. Orders are shipping much quicker. I got an order today which I placed on the 9th of February, and today's the 19th, so that took 10 days instead of the one I placed at the beginning of January, which took 31 days, I think it was, or 32 days. So things are definitely sorting themselves out. It's always going to take a bit longer now we've got all these extra customs procedures following Brexit, but it's much better. So that's really good news. Some of you I will be contacting later this afternoon to say I've got your order, so that will be exciting, I hope. Rosie's here. Hello Rosie, lovely to have you. Faye's saying yes, she refused to buy more until she'd used some. I'm very pleased that card is helping you on your way, Faye. Ruth's here. Hi Ruth, lovely to have you. Okay, have I said hello to Candy? I can see she's here. Did I get... It's funny, sometimes I get a message from you and then a little bit further down it says that you're watching when I've already said hello to you, but I don't think you did. So hi Candy, and hi Joy. Lovely to have you, Joy. Okay, so that's shipping. That's 1 week left of Sale-a-Bration. If you want to book my March card class by post, then 5 o'clock today is the cut-off. I sent a reminder out to everybody who's on my class mailing list on Monday. But if you haven't replied and you'd like to do the class in March, let me know. I showed you some samples of the kind of things that come out in that class a couple of weeks ago, I think. But you'll basically get 6 card kits from me with everything cut to size for you. Any embellishments and ribbons and things like that are all included. And you just provide your own ink pads and stamps because I'm not allowed by copyright to provide you with stamped images. Most people now have got a little stash of sentiments and images that they can use, and the cards are always ones where you can swap something in and out. So if I've used a flower, you can use a butterfly, or if I've used a particular colour, I always make suggestions as to alternative colours that you could use. If you fancy having a go but you don't have any stamps at all, then I can suggest sets that will be really good starter sets for you as well. So that's another option. So you get sent 6 card kits with written instructions and a photograph of the outside and the inside of each card. So this class I don't give videos for because then it means that anybody that doesn't use the internet can still do this particular class. And it's evolved from a face-to-face class I used to run back in the days when we could all meet up in a hall and craft together. So cut off for that is 5 o'clock today. So if you fancy doing that, make sure you've sent me an email before 5 o'clock today. Pam is here. Hi Pam. She says hello to everybody. Lovely to have you, Pam. Have I been doing anything else this week? No, not really. Preparing for classes. I've got quite a lot of classes coming up. And as soon as orders come in, I've been cutting card like a mad woman. And if I haven't been cutting card, I've been designing or I've been making the videos for the classes. So it's been a really fun week. I've enjoyed it. Okay, so I don't think I've missed any messages. Right, so what I'm going to do today is, first of all, give you a few tips on stamping. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to have a reminder, and if you haven't done very much stamping, then it might be good to have a few tips to set you along the way. And then after that, I'm going to look at shaker cards, which are one of my favourite kinds of cards. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make them. So as usual, I'm going to cover you over and turn the camera down, and then we will get straight to the crafting. So bear with me. I always try to remember to talk to you so you know that I haven't just left the room. Oh, I'm getting a low battery warning. That's never good. I've done what I do so often, which is I've plugged it into the mains, but I've forgotten to flick the switch so that it's on, which means, of course, that it's not charging, but I think I've just dealt with that in time. It would be very sad to lose you because I'd run out of battery power. Okay. Now the fiddly bit, which is to find the settings button, which will allow me to turn myself round and mirror image everything as well. And it's always just where the stand hits my phone. There we go. I've just had to take it out of the stand, but hopefully I haven't altered anything very much. Okay, so I might just need to move a few things round once I can see what you can see. So I'm going to reveal my desk. But if you suffer from motion sickness, I suggest you look at something else for a minute or 2 until I tell you it's safe, because I might still have to change things. Until I can see on my iPad what you can see, I don't know if I'm there. Actually, that doesn't look too bad, does it? There we go. The cross on my grid paper isn't quite central, but I can live with that if you can. All right, so stamping then. Let me bring in some card and an ink pad, and I've got a couple of stamps here. So I'm going to assume that you know nothing, which I know is not the case for most of you, but nonetheless, if I assume that, and then hopefully I won't miss out something that you didn't know for any reason. So first of all, card to stamp on. Stampin' Up's card is beautiful to stamp on, are very vanilla, and what used to be Whisper White, we've changed manufacturers and it's now called Basic White card, has got a special finish on it, which means that the ink is sucked into the card really quickly, and so it dries very fast, and there's almost no chance of you smudging your image on this. So that's the first thing to say. And the second is that there is no obvious grain in the card, so when you stamp, the ink isn't going to travel down the fibres of the card. Now, I don't know if you've ever stamped on cheap card and seen your image bleed. That's not going to happen with this card. So that's the first thing to say. If you're having those kinds of issues, it may be the card you're using is not really designed for the job. So decent card to stamp on really helps. An ink pad that has been either is fairly new or has been re-inked once it has started to go dry. We have re-inker bottles for all our ink pads, so they can go on for a very long time with you just adding ink to them as you use them. And I covered re-inking ink pads a few weeks ago, so you can go back and watch that video if you need any more information on that. And I know re-inker bottles have been a bit of a problem for supply recently because an EU regulation changed the labelling requirements, and it's taken the most ridiculous amount of time for them all to come back into stock, but they are coming back in now without the delays that we have been seeing. So get the re-inkers, and I always say if you're buying a new ink pad, make sure you order a re-inker at the same time, and then you've got it by you rather than deciding in the middle of a project that you could really do with re-inking your ink pad. So that's the second thing, a nice juicy ink pad, but not too juicy because you don't want to see ink sitting on the surface of your ink pad. And then a stamp, and we're ready to go. So I've got two kinds of stamps here. I've got this one, which is photopolymer, which is a clear material. Over time it stains to pink. Generally, sometimes it will stain black if you've used a lot of black ink, but generally, no matter what colour you've used, they stain pink. There's nothing wrong with them. That's just the nature of the material. It just goes pink, so don't worry about that. The other kind that Stampin' Up offer are the sort that cling to a clear block. We don't offer them permanently fixed to wooden blocks. They temporarily fix to a clear block, which means they don't take up nearly as much room to store. And these will be made of red rubber, and then they've got a spongy layer there as well to help get a good impression. So I'm going to stamp with both of those. And in case you're wondering, the two sets those are from, this one is from Friends Are Like Seashells. And you can probably see that there are so many stamps in this set that they couldn't show them full size on the cover. So I'm going to use this image, but it's much bigger in reality. And then Enjoy the Moment, which you may have seen me using the other week here because I really like this set. The images are beautiful, and I thought I would use this little sycamore key image today. Alright, so I'm going to stamp with the red rubber stamp first. To ink up the stamp, it's really tempting to push it into the ink pad and then lift it up to make sure you get enough ink on there, but please resist that. What you want to do is tap, 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 okay, 4 or 5 or 6 times. And that will evenly coat your stamp with ink without filling in all the little crevices and engraving on the image. And don't worry if you get ink around the edge like that. You may want to wipe it off, and if you do, that's fine, but you don't need to if you have a correct stamping technique, because that won't transfer. So let me show you that correct stamping technique. So I've got my image, I've inked it up, not too much ink, and I'm just going to rest my hands on the table. I like to hold the block in 2 hands very often, and then I'm just going to go straight down to the card, pause just a second or two, and then lift it straight up, and you'll see I have an absolutely perfect image. And all that ink that was around the edges of the stamp has not transferred, and the reason for that is that I went straight down and then straight up. Now let me re-ink the stamp again. And this time I'm going to do something that I see a lot of beginner stampers do, which is they put it down fine and then they really want all that ink to transfer, so they give it a really good press, and in the pressing it rocks. and that's when you get that ink transferring. You can see the difference, can't you? I've got a blurry outline. The ink that had caught on the edges of the stamp has transferred, which of course I didn't want, and if that's your beginner stamper, it's really disappointing. So it's very easy to get a beautiful impression. I'll show you that. You can see there's plenty of ink where I don't want it, but it doesn't matter. If you go straight down, and I've got good contact, but I'm not pressing really hard, pause and lift it straight up. It's a perfect image. And our stamps are very deeply engraved. So in other words, the raised part of the stamp is well raised from the background, and that's why that ink won't transfer unless you rock your stamp. So that's stamping with one of those, and the process with a clear photopolymer stamp is exactly the same, with the exception that you need an extra layer to rest on. This red rubber stamp has got a layer of grey foam there, which gives you a little bit of softness when you press it down. But the photopolymer stamps are designed so you can see through them onto your work, and of course if that was covered with foam they wouldn't be see-through anymore. So instead you have to provide your own foam by resting on something that's a little bit softer. Now you might have a couple of sheets of funky foam in your craft room. You might have a pile of magazines, that might work. I particularly like the paper piercing mats. They're a very dense foam, so they've got some softness without being too squidgy. These are orderable from us and they're fantastic. They cost about £5, I think, and they're almost indestructible. So once I've got that under my card, I've got that added layer of softness, and then I'm going to proceed as before. I'm just going to tap my stamp gently, and then I'm going to go straight down, wait, and straight up. And there is a beautiful shell image. This is a photorealistic stamp, so it's been developed from an actual photograph of a shell. You can see it's absolutely beautiful. So that is simple stamping. Now I did make some notes, which, as I so often do, I've left over to the side and they're not within arm's reach. So let me just pull those out. There we go. And just see if there's anything I've forgotten to tell you. Ooh, something I was going to say was if you're inking a large stamp, so let's pull this one out, the poppy seed heads. Put it on a large block. So you can see that this stamp is actually longer than my ink pad. So to ink that, I can tap it along and move it so that the whole of the stamp has ended up being inked. But you may find it easier to pick up the stamp pad and take it to your stamp and just tap gently to ink up the stamp that way. And that will then stamp beautifully. Of course, I don't need that foam mat because this is a red rubber stamp with its own cushioning. So there we are. So that's a way of inking up a larger stamp. Some ink pads are not made of this sponge material, but they're made of felt. So one that comes to mind is StazOn, which you may have this waterproof ink pad. You may have some of that in your stash. If you do, you'll know that it's a felt ink pad. And you use this in exactly the same way, except you need to use more pressure when you tap your stamp onto it. So just be firmer, because there's no squidge in this ink pad. It's very, very solid. And you may need to tap a few more times. So that's worth mentioning if you have a felt ink pad. And if you have a brand new stamp that you haven't used before, sometimes when you come to stamp with it, you don't get a very good impression. And that's just because some of the manufacturing residue is left on the stamp. And in that case, clean your stamp off. I've got my scrub here. Just move that to the side. So you've tried to stamp and failed. Clean your stamp, ink it, and stamp again. Now, this impression will be fine because this stamp is not brand new, but on your scrap paper, stamp it and then clean it again, and then ink it and stamp it on your scrap and clean it again. And do this a few times, maybe up to half a dozen times, and that inking, stamping, cleaning process will remove any manufacturer's residue from your stamp. And it doesn't matter whether this is a red rubber stamp or a photopolymer stamp, it will work nicely for both of them. So if you ever get any issues with your stamps and they're brand new, try that. Gillian is here. Hi Gillian, nice to have you here this wet afternoon. Or maybe it's not wet where you are, I don't know. I listened to the local forecast this morning and they promised us bright sunshine this morning and showers this afternoon. And instead it's been miserable and grey the entire day, and the longer the morning wore on, the darker and wetter it got. And it's still raining now. So I hope some of you have got some sunshine. Right, let me just put these away so I've got a bit of space on my desk. Those out of the way, and then I'm going to show you some shaker cards. Okay, there we are. That's a bit more organised, isn't it? So I'm going to show you how to make two different kinds of shaker card, and I'm not going to show you how to make these particular ones I'm showing you. These are just some extra samples. Gillian says it's very wet in West Berkshire. Right, you have my sympathy, Gillian. It's very wet here in Southern Hampshire too. All right, so one way of making a shaker card is to use a special dome. I'm hoping that will show. Wait and see if my iPad catches up and I can see what you can see. I'm hoping you can see that this is a sort of a 3D shape. I turned it too much, haven't I? There we go. Hopefully that will show you. So this is an actual dome which will contain whatever it is you're shaking around, in this case the sequins. And so you can then construct your card around that. We've got this kind of snow globe effect dome, although as you can see it doesn't have to have snow in it. This is definitely a non-Christmassy card. I've got a sailing boat in there and a gull up the top. And we've also got a jar shape dome, and that's the one that I'm going to actually be making in a minute to show you. I'll just show you the rest of the card. So that's what I made with the snow globe dome. I've used the Sailing Home stamp set. The patterned paper is from World of Good. And the wood here is from paper in the In Good Taste pack. And I used, I don't know if you can see, an embossing folder, the Old World paper embossing folder for my Seaside Spray card in the background. This is a snow globe shaker dome, and I cut the aperture in the back using the snow globe scenes dies. So we have a die which cuts this shape. For the jar one I'm going to show you, there's a punch, but for this one there is a die, but the process is the same. So when I talk you through how I'm going to make a card in a minute, you'll understand how I made this one. So people are liking the sailing boat, thank you. Candy's asking me about the Garden Wishes class. As per the email that I sent round, Candy, I am hopeful that I will be posting it out, or I think you're coming to collect, aren't you, next Friday. So it should have gone out today. I didn't get the stuff in time, but I'm doing well with it, so I'm hopeful that it will only be a week delayed, although it was about 2 weeks delayed getting to me. So if it's any different to that, I will let you know, but hopefully that's okay, and I'm really sorry for the delay. I didn't know when I set up the class that there was going to be such complete chaos in the ports and the warehouses in January, so I'm really sorry about that, but fingers crossed it will be ready for you a week today. Oh, just had some tea, that was nice. So the other kind of shaker card you can make is one where you make your own little shaker unit to contain the sequins. So again, I'll hold this up. I'm hoping you can see that this is an actual little unit I've made and stuck on the card. And this is made with window sheet on the front and then card frame round it. This was a project from my Fancy Folds class way back when. So some of you have already made this, I know, but I thought I would pull it out to show you. This one, I am going to make one using this method as well, but it won't be quite the same as this, because this one, in fact, instead of having a solid back, has got window sheet on both sides, so you can actually see through to the stamped inside of the card. But other than that, the principle is the same. You make a little unit out of card and window sheet and you attach it to the front of a card. Although for this one, I then cut an aperture as well in the card for it to go over. But But yes, so that's the two kinds of shaker card then. A bought dome, which holds your shaky bits, like this one, or one where you actually make the little unit. So I'm going to put those aside and start making, because that's really the fun bit, isn't it? So I'll show you what the card will look like in just a moment. And pull out all the exciting bits for the desk. So I've got lots of bits here which I'll explain about in a minute, but let me just show you the card I'm going to make, which is this one. So this is a jar of flowers, and if I shake it, I've got some little green and clear gems in there which shake up and down. And again, if I hold that up, I hope you can see there's like a jar dome in here. So people are liking the cards. Thank you very much, ladies. So that's this card. So this is the one with like a pre-made dome. So let me show you the bits and pieces that I have for this. So I have card base and a layer. I don't know if you can see, I've embossed this one with the Tasteful Textile embossing folder, which I do really like. And then I have a piece of card which I'm going to do my stamping on, plus I've got an extra little bit, if I can find it, there we go, for the little label for the vase. So those are my pieces. Now I'm going to punch a shape in this stamped layer using the jar punch, and that's going to fit my dome. See, the mason jar domes come in a little box of, I think it's 10, yes, 10. So we'll need one of these. There we go. So that's a little dome. So this is what it looks like. So you can see it's moulded plastic, and to push that through the card from behind, it needs a hole, and that's going to be made by the punch. And again, that will be made clear as I go through. Now this has got double-sided tape all around it on this side and on that side, which takes a lot of the fiddliness away from making up the card, which is really nice. You always need something to shake in a shaker card. So these are what I'm using. These are the Flowers for Every Season gems. They're really pretty. They've got a flat side and a domed side. And some of them are clear, and some of them are just jade with a kind of a, I don't know if you can see, an iridescent finish on them. And there are, well, they're all quite small, but there are small and there are very small ones in each colour. So that's what we're going to pop inside to shake. So I've got some ribbon here, which is from the Flowers for Every Season ribbon pack, that has 3 different ribbons in it. So I'm using some of that. For my flowers, which are here, I'm using the Four Season Floral set, which again I know quite a lot of you have got already because I did a class using this a while ago. There is a set which coordinates perfectly with this, and you can get the Jar of Flowers bundle, which is the coordinating stamps and the jar punch. If you've got the annual catalogue, they're on page 12 in there, fairly near the beginning. And it's an absolutely lovely stamp set. There's loads of different kinds of flowers that will fit in your jar. There are lids for the jar and all sorts of bits and pieces, but I haven't got those, so I'm using what I do have. And so I've got this particular flower set, which works just fine. Then I've got some Stamping Blends markers to colour in. I'm using Balmy Blue and Just Jade. I'm using the dark and the light colours of each. And then I've got a little bit of washi tape. If you don't have any washi tape, you can just use a low tack tape, and you'll see why I need that in a minute. Then I've got Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Because I want to colour with my Stamping Blends, I don't want an alcohol-based marker. I need a water-based ink, sorry, not marker. I need a water-based ink to stamp with so that the alcohol-based markers don't make that ink bleed. And I was happy with the black outline, so this is the one I've gone with. Right, let's get going. So I'm going to attach this layer to my card base to start with. I have got, let me take that out, I have got a piece of card there for the insert. So I'll attach this and set it aside, and then that's at least 2 loose pieces that aren't going to be moving around my desk. Set that aside. So the next step is to do this stamped layer, and I like to start off by cutting out that jar shape first of all. So this is my white card. I'm going to cut it down afterwards. You'll see it's actually a little bit bigger than this one, but I found it's much easier to cut it down afterwards than before, because if I start off with one that's bigger than I want, I can just push it into the punch as far down as it will go, and I don't have to worry about the placement other than trying to get it centrally across here. So I make sure that the amount poking out this side is about equal to the amount poking out that side. And when I hold the punch upside down like this, I can see quite clearly where it's going to be on the card. I think I need to move that across just a little bit. There we go. But the card is pushed into the punch as far as it will go. All right, so that is my card now with a jar shape punched out of it. Okay, now I'm going to turn that over and I'm going to leave those pieces together a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. Jigsaw puzzle for people who aren't very good at puzzles like me, because there's only one piece. And I'm just going to hold that piece in place with a couple of little bits of washi tape, and you'll see why in a minute. All right, turn it back to the front. And the first thing to do is to stamp my flowers. Now, I want to place the flowers accurately for where that jar dome is going to go. And I don't know if you can see, I've got stems which go right the way down into my vase. Now, if I show you the stamp, this particular stamp doesn't have a very long stem on it. So if I have the flowers sitting above the vase, I've got very short stems, and I actually wanted stems coming well down. So to make that work, I have a bit of a trick which involves stamping onto the jar as well. So you'll see all that work. It makes much more sense to show you than it does to talk about it. But for both those reasons, I need that jar in the right place, and I don't want it to move. So the stamping that you can see on the inside of that jar dome is this piece I've punched out, and I've punched it out first so that I know exactly where my boundaries are for stamping. If I had left that solid, let's just say I'd got a piece like this that I was going to stamp flowers on, I wouldn't quite know how wide my vase was or how high it was and where I wanted the actual flower part of this image to show. So it's much easier if I've actually got my little piece I've punched out there ready, and because I've just pushed it back in, it's nice and smooth for stamping on. So I'm hoping that that explains. Faye is saying, are all the inks from Stampin' Up not water-based anyway? Yes, they are, Faye, you're quite right. The Stampin' Up branded classic inks, which is all the inks except for the Whisper White craft ink, they are all water-based, and you can use them for a stamping and outline to use with your stamping blends. So yes, absolutely you can. All right, so this Memento ink pad is the only one we have which is black and water-based, which is why I'm using it, and it's a felt ink pad. So bearing in mind what I said before, I'm going to be banging quite hard to ink up my stamp. I've got a foam mat because it's a photopolymer stamp, and I'm going to pop one more or less in the middle. And then one each side, and I'm going to deal with those stems which are a little bit short in a minute. There we go. So that's my first set of stamping, that's my flowers, and I just want to extend these stems now. So I'm going to do that by only stamping the stem section of the image. So to start with, I'm going to clean my stamp. And then I'm going to ink it, but I'm only going to ink the stem section. So I'm going to keep the flowers off the ink pad and just ink up the stem. If I hold that over the white section, I'm hoping you'll be able to see that the ink stops short of the flowers. And then because it's photopolymer, I can just align it with the end of the first one and extend that stem like that. Faye was trying to think while she was laid on the sofa. That's fine, Faye. Okay, and then let's do the same with this one. And the same with the last one. Now you're going to pop sprinkles in here and you're going to pop a bow on the top. So if it's not 100% perfect, don't worry about it. I can't get my head over this. I don't think this is as good as my sample project, but it will be good enough. There we go. So let's close up the ink pad for the moment. So that's all my stamping done. Now I'm just going to colour in the flowers, which won't take too long because they're only tiny. So I've got balmy blue here, and this is the light one, and I'll just add a little bit of shading. I'm going to colour in the buds with the dark one. If you haven't got Stampin' Blends markers, then you need them if you like colouring. They are absolutely gorgeous for colouring because you don't get any lines. No matter how carefully you colour with ordinary felt pens, you get lines, but you don't with these. The alcohol in them means that they just colour and lay down evenly the ink, no matter whether you scribble or you do really neat colouring in lines like that. It's beautiful. Sandy's saying it's very neat. Thank you, Sandy. I do my best. Okay. I did wonder about doing some of this before, and I suppose I could have done here's one I made earlier, but I did want to show you how I had done the stamping. So I didn't want to just produce an entirely completed one, but there is not too much colouring on this. I love to colour, but I did pick a very simple image here. I'm just colouring in a little bit at a time because I want to add some shading to it. These blend as long as you're blending a wet marker pen onto wet ink. If you let it really dry, then you will just see the second darker colour sitting on the top and it doesn't really blend in. Now I'm only using tiny touches of the shading colour for this, but it still works better if you work with the paler colour still damp. Right, there's another bud there and there. So I'm going to quickly do the leaves and then we're ready to move on to the really exciting bit, which is where we actually make it into a shaker. Is that light or dark? Let me have a look. That one's light. I'm sure you know, but all markers, whether it's these Stampin' Blends or the Stampin' Right markers, which are the water-based markers, don't leave them in a jar on your desk. Store them flat. Otherwise you will find that one end will dry up and it will probably never come back to life again, even if you then lay them down. So I love the look of a pen pot with all those beautiful colours showing, but it's not very good really for your pens to do that. Okay, so that's my colouring done. Gillian has this punch